Now that the Japanese F-4 EJ ADTW Phantom is currently 50% off for PC players, I thought I would rate it for you guys so you would know if you want to get it or not. First up, we have speed. Its max speed is 2,340 kilometers per hour. But of course, to get to that speed, you do have to be at 12,000 meters, which isn't practical. For the most part, you are kind of outsped by more powerful vehicles like the JA-37s, Su-22s, and Tornadoes. But you are faster than a majority of Phantom variants, and you are faster than some MiG-21s. Acceleration-wise, you aren't that good, although it's not horrible, and I can't really complain too much about it. It just could be better. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for speed. Moving over to agility, I hate to break it to you, but it is a Phantom, so it's going to be pretty bad. It doesn't even have the upgraded package. When you are slow, you are decently competitive with other aircraft in this BR bracket, but a majority of fights you will be at medium to high speeds where you don't have as much maneuverability. Not to mention you do face a bunch of vehicles that are a lot more maneuverable like the F-5s. So for agility, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. As for offensive armament, you do come equipped with a 20mm cannon, and you do get 640 rounds, and it just slaps in this BR. Meanwhile, you do have access to AIM-9Es, AIM-9Ps, AIM-7Ds, and AIM-7Es. By far, you want to take the AIM-7Es and AIM-9Ps. All in all, these options aren't that good for 11.0 when you're constantly facing all-aspect missiles. Your AIM-7E does have 25 Gs of pull, which is actually really good for a radar missile in this BR bracket, although they do have a 5-second warm-up time, so jousting is almost impossible. But they do have issues with hit ratios, and they do fail to lock sometimes. But overall, they're not horrible. Moving over to the AIM-9Ps, they are rear aspect 20G missiles with decent flare resistance. Now this definitely isn't the best offensive loadout, especially when you consider you can be up tier to 12.0. But the main factor that actually makes this somewhat good is the fact that you can hold up to 8 missiles. So I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10 for offense. Moving over to defense, you do get access to 30 large caliber countermeasures and 60 standard. In addition to that, you do get an RWR that can detect exact positions of radar locks, but it can't detect all of the bands. But at 11.0, that's actually really good. The only part it's lacking in defensive wise is the amount of countermeasures it gets in this BR bracket. But yet in my matches, I didn't really have any trouble running out of countermeasures because it's still enough. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for defense. Moving on to castability, it is notably lacking any kind of guided weaponry that you usually see around this BR bracket. In addition to that, it is placed at 10.7 in ground battles, and which the Japanese tech tree doesn't actually have a ground lineup for. So it makes it kind of awkward to bring in the ground battles, but that's not the point of this video. You do get access to a butt ton of dumb munitions, and you can carry a lot of them. My favorites are definitely the rockets, although the 750-pound bombs are quite nice. You can hold up to around 300 FFR Mighty Mouses, and like 72 Zunis, which is actually pretty good. While you have a lot of firepower, you do lack range, so it's quite hard to counter SPAA. If you want to be a maniac, you could just run 3 20mm cannon pods, but up tiering yourself to 11.3 ground RB, you will have to face SPAA that greatly outrange you. So for castability, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Moving over to features, you do get all the ground pounding necessities along with a really bad radar. Its radar only comes with the search mode, so you will have to face ground clutter and feedback from clouds. Not to mention, all it takes is one chaff for your radar to just lock onto the chaff and completely miss the target. So for its features, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Moving over to durability, this thing can actually take a few punches and still survive. I have been able to tank missiles, 20mm, 30mm, and still push on. The only issue I had with this Phantom was the fact that its wingtips kept getting heavily damaged and it would make it really hard to maneuver. But still, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for durability. Moving over to difficulty, people aren't lying to you, this Phantom is quite mid. It doesn't really have anything going for it, and it's kind of like the only option if you want to grind out the Japanese tech tree, so we're stuck with it. It does require a good amount of knowledge to understand which vehicles you can and cannot dogfight. You have to be able to know how to use the search radar effectively, especially when there's a lot of clutter, and you have to know how to face far superior enemies with all aspect missiles and much better radars. Although luckily, you don't seem to get very many up tiers when you are using this in ARB. For the most part though, you're going to be using this weird boom and zoom tactic where you're kind of using your radar and kind of not at the same exact time depending on the positioning of the enemy. But through a lot of trial and error, I actually got pretty good at it, but it took a while. So a 10 being the easiest and 1 being the hardest, I'm going to give this thing a 4 out of 10 for difficulty. As for the fun value, as you could probably tell by the rating system, this is a pretty mid aircraft, middle of the line, there's nothing too special about it. But I did have some fun trying this aircraft out because it was challenging. It's like the Rubik's Cube type of challenge where you want to have fun, but you also want to smash it into a million different pieces. Because this aircraft is quite frustrating because you are just so close to being so good, but it's just not there. And if you don't have the patience to learn this vehicle, you're going to absolutely hate it. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 for fun. Moving over to its worth, it is a rank 7 premium for Japan, and this vehicle will get you to top tier in no time. The only other real good option for grinding out the entire Japanese air tree would be the AV-8S, but that can't research into rank 8 efficiently, so the only really worthwhile one to get for the full tree is the Phantom. And a massive perk right now until February 3rd, 2025 is the fact that it's 50% off for all PC players. That just makes it extremely worth in the long run if you were looking to grind out the Japanese tech tree. So since it is on sale, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. This gives the F-4 EJ ADTW a solid 58 out of 100. On my grading scale, that gives it a solid C. Overall, if you're willing to put up with some pain and some suffering to learn how to actually use this vehicle, it could be a pretty good tool to grind out the entire Japanese air tech tree. Although it's definitely not the best option if you're just looking to buy a premium for fun.